Research. We're based in Vancouver. We're a national professional research firm, and our survey has to do with some important and timely issues in the West End. The scope of the survey becomes quite apparent as soon as you get going. Please be assured, by the way, that we're not selling or soliciting anything, and all your responses are kept strictly confidential. So I trust you're the person in the household who is 18 years of age or over and whose birthday comes next. And the survey generally takes about 10 or 15 minutes at most. So we thank you very, very much for your participation tonight. And I put on my surveyor's hat. Of course, I can't respond to your answers in any way so as not to influence the survey one way or another. If you need me to clarify or repeat a question, I'm certainly pleased to do that for you. And again, thanks so much for participating. And here's the first question. Could you please tell us your occupation, or whether you are unemployed, a student, or a homemaker? And first of all, and here's a blank box where I get to type in your response, what do you see as the most important issue facing your community, the West End? That is, the issue that you're most concerned about. How familiar are you with the area of the West End of Vancouver around Comox and Robertson? Would you describe yourself as very familiar, somewhat familiar, or not familiar with that area of the West End? And the real estate developer called
Westbank has submitted a proposal to develop the property at Comox St. Have you heard about it? Like a great deal, some, not very much.
How did you hear about this development proposal? I can key in whatever your response might be.
Based on what you know about this proposal, can you tell me what is the main? Tell me what is the main thing you heard about it? The proposal to develop the site.
And then moving forward. Given what you've seen, read, or heard about the proposed development on this site, do you support or oppose it going ahead? Do you support strongly, support somewhat, oppose somewhat, or oppose strongly? And another blank box where I type in your response. Why do you oppose the proposed development? Is there a reason? And anything else in particular?
I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the proposed development. Development has been proposed for the site. It's a rental building with 184 units and would be 22 stories high.
In order for the development to go ahead as proposed, the city would need to rezone the site to allow approximately 2 extra stories of height above the current zoning guidelines, as well as to allow additional floor space. The city has a program to allow this sort of rezoning to encourage developers to build rental housing rather than condominiums. So based on what I've told you now, do you support or oppose this development going ahead? And again, the choices would be support strongly, support somewhat, oppose somewhat, or oppose strongly. Why do you oppose it? Here's another blank box.
Is there anything that would make you more favorable to the proposal? Would you say that Vancouver has too much rental housing, too little, or just about the right amount?
And now I'll ask you the same question about the West End. Based on what you know now, would you say the West End has too much rental housing, too little rental housing, or just about the right amount of rental housing? Of the rental housing that is available, would you say enough of it is affordable or that it's too expensive? And now I'll read you 2 statements. For each one, please tell me if you agree or disagree. First one, tenants face a real risk that their rent will be raised unfairly and that their landlord might evict them in order to convert their building and attract higher paying rents. So would you agree or disagree with that statement? And the next question, or the next statement, increasing the supply of rental housing is a good way to protect tenants from unfair evictions and rent increases. Would you agree or disagree with that statement?
Some people say condominiums and other housing not built as rental housing will provide an adequate supply of rental housing because owners will rent their properties, while others say that condominiums and other rental housing not built as rental, other housing not built as rental, will not be adequate because eventually property which is not built as rental will be taken off the rental market by owner-occupiers. So which is closer to your view? Condos will not provide an adequate supply of rental housing, or they will?
And next question. Some people say that new developments, including some taller buildings on selected sites, are needed to provide more housing choices, including more purpose-built rental housing. Other people say the West End already has enough taller buildings and that new development is not needed. So which would be closer to your view? And we'll move forward. The City of Vancouver has implemented a program called the Short-Term Incentives for Rental Program, STIR. How much have you heard about this program? Would it be a lot, some, a little, or nothing at all? And next, based on what you know now, do you support or oppose this program?
I'm going to read a description of 4 proposals that people have considered for the site at Comox and Robertson. Just tell me which one you would prefer. Okay, the first is Well, a 15-story building comprised entirely of condominiums. It doesn't provide any rental housing, but the building is 7 stories lower than the one proposed by Westbank. Another one is a 20-story building made up of a combination of rental units and condominiums. It will have less housing, but the building is not quite as high as the building proposed by Westbank and is within the correct height guideline. Or a 22-story building very similar to the one proposed by Westbank, but comprised entirely of condominiums. And under this proposal, Westbank would be required to provide the community with additional benefits instead of the rental housing. And the fourth is the proposal submitted by Westbank for a 22-story building comprised entirely of rental units for the life of the building. And this proposal is a couple of floors higher than the others, but obtains more rental housing for the city. Do you prefer any of those?
Some people say the rental housing in the proposed development at 1401 Comox isn't enough to outweigh their concerns with additional height and density, which are included in the development. Other people say that Vancouver needs more rental housing and that it's important to build the development at 1401 Comox for this reason. So which is closer to your view? The two choices are Vancouver needs more rental housing and it's important to build the development at 1401 Comox for this reason, or the rental housing in the proposed development at 1401 Comox isn't enough to outweigh height and density concerns. Now I'll read you a list of some amenities which Westbank might be required to provide in exchange for its proposal being approved. For each one, please tell me if you would definitely support the development if this amenity weren't provided, if you would be much more likely to support it, somewhat more likely to support it, would make no difference, or if it would make you less likely to support it. So I'll give you the options as we go along. The first one, a community space for community, BC's Queer Resource Centre. Would you support or not support that amenity? You would be less likely to support or would make no difference? Definitely support, much more likely to support, somewhat more likely to support, would make no difference, or less likely to support. The next one, put funds improvements to community centers in the West End. I think they intended the reading to be put funding improvements to community centers in the West End. Put funds into aquatic center upgrades is the next one. A community space for Gordon Neighborhood House, including a daycare facility. And put funds into improvements to parks in the West End.
Is there any other amenity which you would like Westbank to provide in exchange for its proposal being approved?
And next question then, I'd like you to think about the development proposal which Westbank Corporation has submitted to the city. The proposal for a 22-story building with 184 rental units. I'll read you a series of statements that people have made about this proposal, and these are just statements of opinion, by the way, and we know not everyone agrees with them. And that's why we're asking your opinion. So for each one, please tell us whether it makes you more or less favorable to the proposal. So I hope that's clear. The first statement will be, the West End already has more than its share of tall buildings. It doesn't need another one. Would that statement make you more or less favorable to this proposal? The statement is, the West End already has more than its share of tall buildings. It doesn't need another one. The proposal does not respect neighborhood planning, as it includes 5 times the density allowed under the existing zoning. So would that statement make you more or less favorable to the proposal? Next statement will be, existing discretionary zoning already allows a 20-story building. The new rental housing and the community space, which will be created in exchange for allowing the extra 2 stories and the extra floor space, are well worth it. So would that statement make you more or less favorable to the proposal? And more rental housing will reduce property values in the neighborhood. Would that statement make you more or less favorable to the proposal? The building won't change the neighborhood. There is already one 18-story building in the next block and a number of other high-rises in the immediate area. So would that statement make you more or less favorable to the proposal? And the West End already has enough rental housing. Condominiums are preferable to rental housing developments in our area. Would that statement make you more or less favorable to this proposal? And shading from the development will have a negative impact on surrounding properties and the Robertson Street mini park. Same responses as before. And building new rental housing in the West End will increase the supply of rental housing and make it more difficult for landlords to aggressively increase rents and unfairly evict tenants. Would that statement make you more or less favorable to the proposal? proposal. The proposed development is consistent with the city's goal of making Vancouver the greenest city in the world because it will allow people to live close to shopping and transit and therefore cut down on greenhouse gas emissions. Would that statement make you more or less favorable to the proposal? And in order for the development to be approved, the developer may be asked to provide the West End with community space for community and Gordon neighborhood house, including a daycare center. Would that make you more or less favorable to this proposal? And the proposed development would be one of the first rental buildings built in the West End in years and will make an important contribution to the stock of rental housing in the West End. And the proposed tower is bulky and out of context with the character of other buildings in the West End, which are surrounded by landscaping and greenery. And the proposed 80 parking stalls for 184 rental units will overload the available street parking in the neighborhood. That make you more or less favorable to this development. The proposal has been recommended by both the city's planning department and the city's urban design panel. Would that statement make you more or less favorable to the proposal? And the large size of the building means a longer building project with more noise, more dirt, more traffic, and more disruption. Would that statement make you more or less favorable to the proposal? Vancouver has seen a lot of new building in the last 20 years, but virtually none within the area traditionally defined as the West End, that is, west of Burrard and south of Georgia. Would that statement make you more or less favorable to this proposal?
Finally, given what you've seen or heard about it, the proposal by Westbank, including the information you've been given in the survey, support or oppose the development? A petition has been circulated in the West End opposing the proposed development. Did you personally sign it? And why did you sign it? Our Vancouver City Council recently established a West End Advisory Committee. How much have you heard about it? A lot, some, a little, nothing. And what have you heard about it? Could you tell me the year of your birth? And what type of dwelling do you live in? Is it a single detached house, duplex, or townhouse, apartment, condominium? And do you own or rent it? How long have you lived in the West End? And if the Vancouver municipal election were held today, which party's candidates would you most likely vote for? COPE, the Coalition of Progressive Electors, the NPA, or Nonpartisan Association of Vision Vancouver? So that was the next question, and you voted for Gregor then. Okay, I'd like to, and then finally here, I'd like to ask about your sexual orientation. Do you consider yourself to be heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual?
What it's going to take is all of us together, letting Sam Sullivan and the MPA know that we're not going any further down the road that they've been going, and that developers are not going to make the West End into a Yale town.
Yeah!